Breaking news in the New York hush money trial involving former President Donald Trump. Presiding Judge Juan Merchan found Mr. Trump in contempt for 9 violations of his gag order, fined him $9,000. Now, in the gag order, Trump was barred from, quote, making or directing others to make public statements about known or reasonably foreseeable witnesses concerning their potential participation in the investigation or in this criminal proceeding. NBC News correspondent Rahema Ellis joins us now with the very latest. So, Rahema, walk us through this ruling from Judge Merchan and what it means for the former president.
Joe, what this means is that the former president has been told very specifically by the court that this is not allowed. These kinds of posts, which you point out leading into me, that were, according to the prosecution, making disparaging remarks about witnesses or potential witnesses, was a violation of the gag order. What the judge has also gone so far as to say that he is ordering that the Trump team take down those posts.
Welcome, guys. Adam is here. So what just happened right now? A federal judge found Trump in contempt for violating her direct court orders 9 separate times, shut down his legal operation, and warned his lawyers they could face jail time. The ultimate irony for a president who built his brand on law and order. Let me take you inside that courtroom. The case involves a federal probe. There are discovery materials that must be produced. There are documents that need to be turned over. There are deadlines that must be met.
Katie, we hear Trump is looking incredulous. He's shaking his head. He keeps saying this gag order is unconstitutional. How can you not allow him to respond when he's a candidate running for president right now? Respond to that.
He can still say what he wants as a political candidate, and protected speech is allowed under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. The problem is he's already been proven and found by a judge to have run afoul of a gag order, one that I will re-emphasize has been limited in nature. It's not some broad gag order. It's been challenged. It's been found to be totally appropriate for somebody like Donald Trump. I think what's happening here is his lawyer, Todd Blanche, is saying that certain witnesses, for example, Michael Cohen, are purportedly using this gag order as a, quote, sword and a shield. And Judge Merchan noted that maybe that can be a problem for certain witnesses if they continue to look like they're also flirting with using the gag order as a sword and a shield.
Judge Merchant issued clear, unambiguous orders about how this all needed to happen. She said, "Here are your deadlines. Here's how the evidence needs to be organized. Here's what you need to produce. Follow these orders exactly. No exceptions. No delays, no creative reinterpretations." But Trump's legal team apparently decided that those orders didn't apply to them, or maybe they thought they could get away with partial compliance.
But Donald Trump is trying to do the same thing. He's trying to basically say, I can do and say certain things, but I'm not running afoul of this gag order because I am a political candidate. But that's not how it works. Politics does not live in our judiciary. It does not live in our judicial system, which is why I also think that the prosecution announced this morning that they're not seeking jail. I think it's frankly a failed opportunity at this point. But if they're not seeking jail and all that's going to happen is another fine, then I think you're going to see more from Donald Trump.
Or maybe they were simply too disorganized to meet the deadlines. Whatever the reason, they violated the judge's orders. And not just once, 9 times, 9 separate violations. That's not a mistake. That's not an accident. That's a pattern. That's willful defiance. Now, here's what you need to understand about contempt of court. It doesn't require malicious intent. You don't have to be trying to break the order for it to be contempt. You just have to violate it knowingly. You have to know the order exists and then violate it anyway. Whether you think the order is fair doesn't matter. Whether you think you have a good reason doesn't matter. If the judge told you to do something and you didn't do it, that's contempt. And Judge Merchant found that Trump's team knowingly violated her orders. They knew what she wanted them to do, and they did something else anyway. That's damning. That's serious. Because it shows a pattern of disrespect for the court, a pattern of ignoring judicial authority, a pattern of thinking that they are above the rules. And judges do not like that. Judges take it very seriously when people ignore their orders. Because if people can just ignore court orders whenever they feel like it, the whole system breaks down. The court system only works if people follow the judge's rulings. If they don't, there's no rule of law. There's just chaos. So Judge Merchant called Trump's legal team back into court, and she basically said, We need to have a conversation about these violations. You violated my orders 9 times. You need to explain yourselves. You need to tell me why I shouldn't impose serious sanctions on you. You need to tell me why I shouldn't hold you in contempt and potentially send you to jail. Trump's lawyers had to sit there and try to defend the indefensible. They had to try to explain why they repeatedly violated the judge's orders. They had to try to come up with reasons that might persuade the judge to go easy on them. But from what we know, it didn't go well. The judge wasn't buying their excuses. She could see that this was a pattern. She could see that Trump's team was just not respecting the court's authority. And she basically said, "I'm shutting this down. Your legal team as currently operating cannot continue. You need to make changes. You need to show me that you're going to follow my orders going forward, or else I'm going to impose serious consequences." Now, this is where it gets really intense. Contempt of court can result in fines, it can result in jail time, it can result in sanctions against the lawyers themselves. Lawyers can lose their licenses, they can be barred from practicing law, they can be held personally accountable for violations. And when a judge finds someone in contempt, especially when it's a pattern of violations like this, the judge has a lot of discretion in terms of what penalties to impose. The judge could fine Trump, she could fine his lawyers, she could hold Trump in contempt and threaten him with jail time. That's not uncommon. Judges use contempt charges to enforce their authority, and when someone is found in contempt multiple times, that escalates the situation. It makes the consequences more serious. It sends a message that this behavior is not acceptable and there will be real consequences if it continues. But here's what made this hearing truly extraordinary. Trump apparently didn't take it well. When the judge started listing the violations, when she made clear that she was finding him in contempt, Trump had some kind of outburst. He was upset about the ruling. He was angry about being called out. And the judge told him to sit down. She told him to calm down and respect the courtroom. And there are reports that physical restraint was threatened if he didn't comply. Let that sink in. A federal judge threatened to have a sitting president physically removed from her courtroom. That's extraordinary. That's the kind of thing that would be absolutely shocking in normal times. But we're in a situation where a president is so disrespectful of the court, so willing to violate orders, so unwilling to accept judicial authority, that a judge feels the need to threaten physical restraint. That tells you everything you need to know about how serious this has gotten. The judicial system is at its breaking point with this president, and this isn't happening in a vacuum. This contempt ruling is connected to a web of other legal cases that Trump is dealing with. There's the hush money conviction from New York, where Trump was found guilty and is now trying to appeal. There are immigration cases where Trump has been fighting deportations and facing contempt charges related to plane turnarounds and other incidents. There are ongoing federal investigations into classified documents and into January 6th. And now this contempt ruling is stacking on top of everything else. It's starting to paint a picture of a president who is consistently violating court orders, consistently defying judges, consistently trying to avoid accountability. The hypocrisy is absolutely stunning. Trump built his entire political identity on the idea that the courts are corrupt, that judges are biased, that the whole system is rigged against him. "Lock her up," was his rallying cry. He talked about prosecuting Hillary Clinton. He talked about holding people accountable. He ran for president on a platform of law and order and making sure that people face consequences for breaking the law. And now he's literally in court getting held in contempt for breaking the law. He's the one being sanctioned. He's the one being threatened with jail time. He's the one being told that his legal team can't operate the way they've been operating. The American people are starting to notice. They're seeing a president who talks about law and order while simultaneously breaking the law. They're seeing someone who claims to respect the courts while simultaneously defying court orders. They're seeing a man who said other people should go to jail while he's the one facing contempt charges. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. So what happens next? That's the big question. The judge has basically told Trump's legal team that they need to shape up. They need to follow the court's orders going forward. They need to show respect for the judicial process. And if they don't, the consequences are going to get much worse. The judge could file criminal contempt charges. she could seek jail time. She could hold Trump personally accountable. This is the kind of thing that could actually land a president in prison. That's not something that happens very often. It's not something that's happened in modern history. But the situation is serious enough that it could happen, and this is raising all kinds of constitutional questions. What happens if a federal judge tries to jail a sitting president? Does the president have Secret Service protecting him that would prevent him from being taken into custody? Can Congress intervene? Can the president pardon himself? These are the kinds of questions that legal experts are grappling with right now because we're in uncharted territory. We're in a situation where a president is behaving in ways that are so disrespectful of the courts, so dismissive of judicial authority, that people are actually wondering if the system can handle it. That's terrifying. That's the kind of thing that threatens the entire foundation of the country, because the rule of law depends on people respecting the courts. It depends on people following judges' orders. It depends on the president being willing to accept judicial authority. And if the president decides he's not going to do that, then the whole system is in danger. Now let's talk about what this means for Trump's other legal cases, because this contempt ruling is happening alongside all of his other legal problems. Every time Trump violates a court order, every time he shows contempt for the judicial system, it makes his other legal cases worse. It makes judges less willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. It makes juries less sympathetic to his arguments. It damages his credibility. And it sends a message to prosecutors that this is a defendant who is not going to respect the legal process, so they need to be aggressive in pursuing charges. This also has huge implications for the midterm elections and for Trump's political future. Republicans need to hold on to their seats. They need to maintain control of Congress, and having a president who is under multiple contempt rulings, who is violating court orders, who is showing disrespect for the judicial system, that's not helpful for Republican candidates. That's the kind of thing that energizes Democratic voters. That's the kind of thing that makes swing voters question whether the Republican Party should be in power. That's the kind of thing that could cost Republican seats in the House and Senate. So even some GOP leaders are starting to get worried about this. They're starting to say, we need Trump to respect the courts. We need him to follow judges' orders. We need him to stop showing contempt for the judicial system, because if he doesn't, it's going to hurt us politically. Democrats, meanwhile, are calling for impeachment. They're saying, this is unacceptable. This is a threat to the rule of law. This president is not respecting the Constitution. This president is not respecting the courts. We need to do something about this. And some Republicans are starting to get nervous too, because even if they support Trump, even if they like his policies, there's a real constitutional question here about whether a president should be able to just ignore court orders and face contempt charges. There's a real question about what it means for the rule of law if the president can just defy judges. Let me give you some broader context. There have been other incidents. There have been other outbursts. There have been other situations where Trump has had to be told to control himself in court. In the hush money case in New York, where Trump was convicted, he was very vocal about his disdain for that trial, for the judge, for the verdict. He's talked about appealing. He's talked about overturning the conviction. In immigration cases, Trump has been fighting to prevent deportations, and there have been incidents with plane turnarounds where Trump's team violated court orders and faced contempt charges for that. There's a pattern here, a clear pattern of Trump and his legal team violating court orders, showing disrespect for the judicial system, and thinking that they can just ignore judges whenever they feel like it. And the judges are starting to put their foot down. They're starting to say, no, this stops now. You're going to follow my orders, or you're going to face serious consequences. So when this contempt ruling came down, it sent shockwaves through the political establishment. Democrats immediately started talking about impeachment. They started saying this is unacceptable. This is a threat to the rule of law. This president is not respecting the Constitution. This president is not respecting the courts. We need to do something about this. And some Republicans started to distance themselves from Trump on this issue. Some started to say, look, we support the president, but he needs to respect the courts. He needs to follow the judge's orders. He can't just violate the rules whenever he feels like it. That's not how the system works. That's not compatible with being president. Now, let's talk about what this means for the rule of law in America. The rule of law is the idea that everyone, including the president, has to follow the law. It's the idea that judges have authority. It's the idea that court orders have to be obeyed. It's the foundation of everything that makes America a functioning democracy. And when a president violates court orders, when a president shows contempt for the judicial system, when a president acts like he's above the law, that threatens the entire foundation of the country. It threatens everything that America is supposed to stand for. And the judges are basically saying, no, you can't do this. You have to follow the law. You have to respect the courts. You have to accept judicial authority. And they're backing that up with contempt charges and the threat of jail time. This is a crucial moment. This is a moment where the judicial system is standing up and saying, we're not going to let the president run roughshod over the rule of law. We're not going to let him violate court orders and face no consequences. We're going to hold him accountable. And that's important. That's necessary. That's the only way to preserve the rule of law in this country. Let me leave you with this. A federal judge found the President of the United States in contempt of court for violating her orders 9 separate times. She shut down his legal team. She threatened physical restraint when he had an outburst in her courtroom. And she made clear that more severe consequences, including jail time, are on the table if the violations continue. The man who built his brand on locking up his political opponents is now the one facing the very real possibility of being locked up himself. The hypocrisy is staggering, the legal jeopardy is real, and the rule of law is being tested like never before. The judge has drawn a line in the sand. The question now is whether Trump will finally respect it, or whether this confrontation is about to escalate even further. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over, and the next chapter could get even more dramatic.